Hi, parents and guardians. I'm Dawn Infurna-Bean, and I am your students' language arts teacher. The students call me Mrs. Bean. Some course information that you might find helpful. First of all, my language arts course agenda is linked in Schoology, and you'll see weekly lessons and links to important information. You can also contact me at my email if you have any questions or comments. I think good communication is vital. So whenever you have some comments or some questions, please feel free to contact me. Same goes for your students. They've already been emailing me and they're quite polite, and I welcome those questions. Some students have been requesting Zoom meetings at like 9 o'clock at night or 5 in the morning. That's not going to happen. Sorry. However, they can request extra help, and that's our next slide. However, before we move to that, there's a couple of tutorials here for you to maybe get a better understanding of Schoology, the ins and outs, and that would be this link here. And then the first link is if you know Schoology and you just want some more information about checking grades on the website or setting up some settings that could alert you of weekly updates. You can also program the phone app. Okay, extra help. Now this year it's an interesting year, right? Adolescence, first of all, right? We know what that's all about. Growing up, all those developmental changes, the physical changes, the emotional changes, the social changes, and that's kind of getting in the way of everything else, right? However, if we really take all of that into account and we're sensitive to that, they can also learn as well with us being better at adapting to meeting all of those needs. So with that, there's probably going to be some days where they're discombobulated and some days where they're disorganized and they just don't know, and they really don't know because that frontal lobe is still forming there and they're making all those connections. And so when they say I don't know why I did that, they probably don't. So sometimes they may need extra help, and extra help is available. During plus period, many days during the week. Right now, we're sort of doing a 7th grade boot camp, 5th period. So students come to the same class every day. We do grade checks, and they come up with weekly goals. And we have some social emotional lessons, and also some digital lessons, digital citizenship. And then they have a lot of time to do some work and to get help from teachers. So that's a good time for them to request to see teachers, and sometimes teachers may request to see them as well. As we talked before, students can always email, and then there may be times at lunch and after school. So right now, Zoom lunch or after school Zooming. When they get back in the classroom, it's an option too for lunches or after school for extra help. Sometimes I will request to see them, and then other times they can request to see me. Okay, grading. So right now, tests, major writing assignments, assessments are going to be 25%. The language arts department is weighting more on classwork, homework, and other non-assessment tests because we really want the kids to practice those skills they may have missed last spring and to develop the skills that they're learning now. So sometimes kids will just be like, yeah, I'm just going to take the assessment. And they don't really practice the process, and the process is pretty important, especially in language arts. So we want to put emphasis on the process. So they'll get points for all the pieces along the way, and that's really good for them to see how they can make improvements. And there's lots of little changes along the way, especially in writing assignments, that could benefit their learning. So it's really important for them to gauge in any learning process, especially the writing process. And they will be doing a lot of writing this year. They're already writing a paragraph that's due on Wednesday. They listen to a podcast, and to answer some questions, formulate their notes, and then put their notes into claim statement and support it with evidence and explain it. And so they're coming along pretty well. So it's kind of like a diagnostic for me to see how they're doing in their writing, what deficits they might have, and what skills sets they do come to me with, so I know what to focus on. Late work, we do have a policy in our team, and you can find that late work policy through the link here in our team policy documents, and you'll find some other vital information there as well. We do deduct points for late work that's unexcused. However, I haven't been deducting points yet. That probably won't happen for a while. They're still trying to figure it out. So we're being very gentle with our points right now and deductions and so forth. So course information for language arts, we do have a textbook. It's a Springboard textbook. I'll be utilizing that quite a bit for their readings. I feel like right now we're having a lot of screen time, so I think it's going to be important to have a physical book. And I know that everyone has that physical book, and it's a book where there's pretty good readings in there, and we'll do a lot of annotating of it. Annotating is a skill that helps them with their reading comprehension and also thinking about their reading metacognitively. So we'll be doing quite a bit of that. So you should expect their textbook to be marked up. It is a consumable, so they can write in it. We do also have that textbook online. We'll be reading some novels this year, and hopefully we'll get to all of them. This year, I wanted to start the year off with Beowulf. However, we're going to put that on hold till we get back in the classroom. We'll be reading The Outsiders, The Pearl, which is Steinbeck classic. The Outsiders is also considered a modern classic now. It's over 50 years old, and it still transcends time. It has some aspects of it that kids can still relate to. We read Tangerine, which is a modern novel, and Beowulf, back to Beowulf. Beowulf is a very old novel. However, it's a retelling, but it's a Norse myth, and the kids love myths, so they typically enjoy that and all the gore. This year, they do also read independent novels and books, and so typically I like to assign at least one a quarter. So they'll probably be reading definitely at least one. Some of them may be reading more than one. And along with those independent books is often assessments, or assignments, or projects. We'll also be reading articles and excerpts of information and short stories that are not in the textbook. This year, they'll be reading quite a bit of primary source documents so they can do some research. I provided you, and I'll provide your students with some resources that they can utilize to get books. This first one is the Sora app, so students might be familiar with that from last year. And this is a great application. The kids can read books online. They can read them on their phone, they can read them on a Chromebook, they can read them on a laptop, so it's very compatible with lots of devices, iPhone, Android, Kindles. So they have a wide variety of genres and authors and subjects that they could read from. So highly recommend this if they're not using that already. Our library will be eventually getting to the point where they'll be able to physically check out books to students. I don't have a lot of information on that yet, but that is coming. So you'll expect that, hopefully have that soon. I also have this search for books by Lexile, subject, author, and title. And a Lexile, some of the sixth graders are familiar with Lexile, some are not. But basically a Lexile is the level of a book, not the level for the student, but the level of the book. And the level is determined by how difficult the sentence structure is and the subject matter. So higher Lexile, more difficult book. Students may remember their Lexiles from last year. They may not. This year we will be having a test to determine their Lexiles, and we'll be sending that home. And then there's this document that our librarian created last year. And so this was a summer reading list, but I thought I'd push this out. These are all student approved titles by our district. And these are all books that the students can find on Sora. And so this is a great resource. Okay, so my curriculum. This year, I'd like to look at my course as a chance for students to develop their communication, the writing, and speaking. A lot of emphasis on writing, a lot of emphasis on reading, a lot of emphasis on speaking. So I'll let you look through this at your leisure. It lists some of the types of writing that they will be doing, the types of literary response and analysis with their reading. Vocabulary development is a big part of 7th grade. They study Latin roots and Greek roots and Latin and Greek affixes, so prefixes and suffixes. They also study words in context, and they study words that are often seen on the SATs and academic vocabulary. And I deliver that in a variety of different ways. We study conventions and mechanics, so their sentence structure and their punctuation, their grammar. Oral language, do a lot of that this year. So public speaking, we try to start off the year kind of easy speaking with impromptu speeches, so kind of fun, and then look at what does good speaking look like. And so we end the year with a monologue, a reciting of a poem, or a dialogue, a Shakespearean dialogue. The kids get a choice. Organization is key this year. So the students got their daily planners last week, and so we'd like them to fill those out. They should have a binder or some kind of file system. So they could be folders, it could be an accordion folder. And they'll probably use that more when they get back to school. But right now, if they're printing documents, if they don't want to read online all the time, it would be good to organize that information. This year I practiced a lot of skills, so expository reading strategies, trying to give the students strategies to comprehend information and think about it metacognitively. So they're kind of thinking about their thinking, understanding like, why am I skipping over those words? Or how come I didn't comprehend that? So hopefully helping them know what they don't know and then trying to figure it out. So those are close reading strategies. We'll do a bit of that this year. I also try to teach them some study skill strategies. So Cornell note-taking, it's just a style of note-taking, some memorization skills, such as using like mnemonic devices. So mnemonic is just a memory cue. So coming up with different strategies for that. Using summarizing. Summarizing is a really good technique to show that you've comprehended information. And flashcards. So we use flashcards for their vocabulary primarily. So they will eventually have to have some index cards, and that is on the team policy under some of the items that they need to be prepared for school. So their supplies. We'll be going over spelling rules and editing rules. They'll be doing a lot of editing and revising of their work this year. Their writing is a process. It's always a process. So there's always, from the start to the beginning, lots of elements that they need to pay attention to. So we may start with reading and taking notes, and then formulating a rough draft, and then editing it, and then revising it, and having a peer edit and a teacher edit, and then creating the final. So you can often expect that kind of process. Finally, we do have some research this year, and so they'll be using primary and secondary sources and synthesizing information. So pulling information in from numerous documents. It's kind of a higher level skill that 7th graders need to learn. They'll struggle with it a little bit in the beginning, but they'll be able to do it pretty well at the end of the year. We use MLA formatting, which is Modern Language Association. The high school also uses that, and it's just a style for organizing their papers, and they're already using MLA format for the paragraph that they're turning in this week. They'll be doing some outlining to organize information, and they'll be learning how to embed textual evidence, which actually they did on their paragraph. They had to embed a quote as evidence, and then using parenthetical citations. So that's just like citing their source at the end of the information that they have listed, that is quoted in parentheses. So they'll learn that this year as well. Okay, organization and supplies. I mentioned this a little bit, but their Google Drives are kind of a mess right now. So hopefully they're working on creating folders and putting documents in folders, and we'll continue to work on that throughout the year. Here is a great link to the G Suite and some other applications, and little tutorials. So I find this quite useful. Your students might find it useful, but you actually might find it very useful as well. So this is a great document for Google Suite, understanding how to use some of the applications. I talked about binder folder organization a little bit. Organization is tough sometimes for this age group, so it's really important that they have an area that's not cluttered, where they can work. They have their papers organized, their books organized, their supplies handy. Right now I'm finding like they're having trouble organizing their computer screen and understanding how to do a split screen and understanding how to open some applications. So we're going to have to back up and work on that stuff. And then lastly, supplies. I mentioned that earlier, and we do have some supplies. Some of those supplies will be relevant now while they're at home, and then a lot of them will be more relevant when they get back to school. So that is the end of my presentation. I look forward to seeing you if you stop by between 6 and 7 on Wednesday night and bring your questions. I look forward to a good year with your students. I know it's really super challenging right now for everybody. We're trying to take it slowly and trying to get all the kids on board, understanding where they need to be and when. We're kind of having kids show up late for some of the classes, and sometimes their technology kicks them out of the classes. So we're trying to deal with that. It's not easy, but you know, your kids are stepping up to the plate, and this is rough on them as 7th graders, right? They have to probably have the roughest transition being new to a school and using new applications like Schoology, but they'll get it. I know they will, and they'll get it with the help of their families and the help of their teachers, and we can do this. Okay, thank you.